Arya's body hit the ice before she ever saw the monster chasing the pup, only for the Alpha King himself to burst from the storm and find her dying in his son's arms. But when he pried the child free, the pup's magic surged, locking onto her heartbeat, and Ragnar realized he might have just found the girl fate warned him about. Before you start this story, take a breath, because what you're about to hear isn't just fate, it's sacrifice. If you've ever felt unseen, unwanted, or unworthy, Arya's journey will hit you deep. Watch what happens when a girl with no wolf defies death itself, and destiny takes notice. Let's begin. They told Arya that sacrifice was noble, that kindness brought blessings, that the moon goddess rewarded those who gave of themselves freely. They lied. In the wild, sacrifice only brought death. Arya had learned that truth the hard way, stumbling through the frozen wasteland with frostbite crawling up her limbs and hunger gnawing her insides hollow. She had been born wolfless in the powerful Northreach pack, a daughter of the Black Howl bloodline who could not howl. Her inner wolf had never spoken, never stirred, never shifted. Spiritless, they called her. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes during meals. Her mother flinched when she entered a room, as though Arya's very presence was a wound that wouldn't heal. In a world where wolves equaled worth, she was less than nothing. When famine swept through Northreach like a plague, Arya's name was the first whispered in the dark. One less mouth to feed, one less burden to bear. They cast her out with a threadbare cloak and colder words, and she didn't fight them. What was the point? She had spent 18 years trying to be enough, and it had never mattered. Now she wandered alone through a blizzard that screamed like something alive and hungry. Her fingers were numb, her vision blurred at the edges. The cold had stopped hurting an hour ago, which meant she was dying. She knew that much. Part of her almost welcomed it. Then she heard the cry. High-pitched, terrified, desperate. Arya froze, swaying on legs that barely held her weight. Every instinct told her to keep moving, to conserve what little strength remained. But the sound came again, weaker this time, and something inside her fractured. She crawled toward it. Her knees sank into snow that felt like broken glass. Her breath came in ragged gasps that burned her throat. But she pushed forward until she found him, a wolf pup pinned beneath a fallen branch, his fur half frozen, his tiny body trembling. His eyes met hers. Gold-flecked silver. Too aware. Too intelligent. He whimpered and tried to lick her numb fingers. Easy, she whispered, though her voice cracked. I've got you. She gripped the branch with hands that had no feeling left. Lifted. Pulled. Her muscles screamed. Her vision went white at the edges. But the branch moved, and the pup scrambled free, collapsing against her chest. Arya fell backward into the snow. The pup burrowed into her arms, shaking violently. She curled her body around him, shielding him from the wind with what remained of her strength. Her hand stayed draped over his small form even as the world tilted and darkness pulled at her consciousness. The blizzard swallowed them both. Somewhere in the haze of dying, Arya heard something that didn't belong to the storm, a sound so deep it made her bones vibrate. A colossal wolf burst through the trees, fur dark as storm shadows, eyes blazing amber with fear and fury. He shifted mid-stride. Bones cracked. Muscles reformed. A towering man took the wolf's place, broad-shouldered and commanding, his face carved from stone and desperation. He dropped to his knees, so hard the snow burst around him. His hands trembled as he reached for the pup in Arya's arms. Then his gaze fell on her, frostbitten, broken, still holding his son against her heart. Ragnar Winterclaw, Alpha King of the Northern Dominion, lifted Arya's body with a gentleness that didn't match the raw power radiating from him. His voice was rough, disbelieving. "Who are you, and why would you die for my son?" But Arya couldn't answer. The darkness had already claimed her. The Winterclaw fortress rose from the snow-covered mountainside like a fortress carved from ancient ice and stone. Ragnar crossed the threshold with Arya cradled in one arm and Alden clutched against his chest with the other, his roar shaking the rafters before he'd even reached the Great Hall. Healers! Now! Guards scattered. Servants stumbled over themselves. Within moments, 3 healers appeared, their faces pale as they took in the scene. Their Alpha King, wild-eyed and covered in snow, holding an unconscious stranger and the pup no one was supposed to know existed. "My lord," the eldest healer began carefully. "We should take the boy too." "Treat her first," Ragnar snarled. The healer's gaze flicked to Arya's frost-bitten hands, her blue-tinged lips. "She's powerless. An outsider. We don't have the resources to." Ragnar's eyes flashed amber, his wolf rising dangerously close to the surface. "Did I stutter?" The healers flinched and moved immediately, clearing a low bed near the hearth. Ragnar laid Arya down with a gentleness that contradicted the fury radiating from him. He tried to set Alden beside the fire, but the pup twisted in his arms, whimpering desperately. The moment Ragnar placed him on the floor, Alden scrambled back to Arya's side, pressing his small body against hers and growling, actually growling, at anyone who came too close. "Alden," Ragnar said quietly, kneeling beside his son. "She needs help. Let them work." The pup's only response was to burrow closer to Arya, his silver-flecked eyes locked on her unconscious face. Ragnar stared, something cold and uncertain settling in his chest. Alden had been volatile since birth, his magic unpredictable and dangerous. He'd bitten healers, shredded curtains, sent shockwaves through stone walls during fits no one could calm. Yet here he was, perfectly still beside a dying stranger. "Work around him," Ragnar ordered. The healers exchanged nervous glances but obeyed, carefully warming Arya's hands, treating her frostbite, coaxing tea past her cracked lips. Through it all, Alden remained pressed against her side, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm with hers. The room had never been this quiet when Alden was awake. "My lord," one of the younger healers whispered, her eyes wide. "His energy is stable. I've never seen him like this." Ragnar's jaw tightened. Neither had he. The eldest healer leaned closer, studying Arya's face with unnerving intensity. "She saved the boy in the storm?" "Yes." "And he won't leave her?" "You have eyes." The healer's wrinkled hand trembled slightly as she pulled back. The seer's words. The broken one who carries the key. Could she be? "Enough." Ragnar cut her off, though his gaze never left Arya. He stood slowly, his voice dropping to something deadly and final. "She stays. Under my protection. In this fortress. Until I understand what's happening." His eyes swept the room, landing on each healer in turn. "Touch her without my permission, and you answer to me." "Understood." The healers bowed quickly. Ragnar looked down at his son, still curled protectively around the spiritless girl who should have meant nothing, but somehow meant everything. Arya woke to warmth. That was wrong. She should be frozen. Dead. Buried beneath snow that never melted. Her eyes snapped open, and panic surged through her chest like wildfire. She wasn't outside. She was inside, surrounded by stone walls carved with intricate wolf symbols, wrapped in furs so thick she could barely move. A massive hearth crackled nearby, casting dancing shadows across a room far too grand for someone like her. "Where am I?" She tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. Every muscle ached. Her fingers throbbed with the aftermath of frostbite. But she was alive, and that meant someone had brought her here. Someone who might want something in return. Arya's breathing quickened. Had another pack found her? Were they going to use her? Sell her? Mock her for being spiritless before casting her out again? She threw off the furs and swung her legs over the edge of the bed. A small, warm body immediately launched itself onto her chest. Arya gasped as the wolf pup from the storm scrambled up her torso, whimpering and licking her face frantically. His silver-flecked eyes were wide, almost desperate, as though he'd been waiting forever for her to wake. Hey, it's okay, she whispered, instinctively cradling him against her.
I'm okay.
The pup burrowed into her arms, trembling but refusing to let go. Arya's heart twisted. She didn't know why this little creature clung to her like she mattered, but she couldn't bring herself to push him away. Not when he looked at her like she was the only safe thing in the world. I have to leave. She couldn't stay here. Whoever owned this fortress would realize soon enough that she was worthless. Better to leave now, before they decided her fate for her. Arya stood slowly, still holding the pup. Her legs wobbled, her vision blurred, but she forced herself toward the door, each step heavier than the last. She made it 3 steps before the world tilted. Her knees buckled. Strong arms caught her before she hit the floor. Where exactly do you think you're going? Arya's breath hitched. She looked up into the face of the man from the storm, the one who'd shifted from that massive wolf. His amber eyes burned with something between concern and frustration. Ragnar Winterclaw. She'd heard stories about the Alpha King.
Cold.
Ruthless. Unforgiving. Her voice cracked. I need to leave. You can barely stand. I don't belong here. Ragnar's jaw tightened. He carried her back to the bed with infuriating ease and set her down gently. Alden immediately climbed back onto her lap, growling softly at his own father. Ragnar stared at them both, his expression unreadable. Why did you save him? He asked quietly. Arya's throat tightened. Because no one should be left to die alone. You nearly died doing it. I know what it feels like, she whispered, her voice barely audible. To be abandoned. To be nothing. She looked down at the pup in her arms. I couldn't let him feel that too. Something shifted in Ragnar's gaze, something raw and unexpected. He knelt slowly, meeting her eyes with an intensity that stole her breath. You won't be abandoned here, he said, his voice low and firm. Not while my son needs you. Not while I'm trying to understand what you are to him. His hand rested briefly on Alden's small head. You're under my protection now, Arya Blackhowl, whether you accept it or not. Arya's heart pounded. She didn't know if that was a promise or a prison. But as Alden nuzzled against her chest and Ragnar's steady gaze held hers, she realized one terrifying truth. She wasn't leaving this place anytime soon. Ragnar didn't sleep that night. He stood by the window of his private study, staring out at the snow-covered mountains while his mind churned with questions that had no answers. Behind him, maps and ancient texts lay scattered across his desk, prophecies he'd read 1,000 times, searching for something he'd missed. Asterisk, your heir will be hunted before his first shift. Only the broken one who carries the key can anchor him to this world. Asterisk, the seer's words had haunted him since Alden's birth 3 years ago. Ragnar had hidden his son from the world, told everyone the child had died during delivery. He'd kept Alden's secret, protected, isolated, because the prophecy had been clear. Assassins would come for him. But the prophecy hadn't warned him about the rest. The surges. The first one happened when Alden was 6 months old. The pup had been sleeping peacefully when his small body suddenly convulsed, magic exploding outward in a shockwave that shattered every window in the nursery. The healer who tried to touch him was thrown across the room, her hands burned so badly she couldn't work for weeks. Since then, the episodes came without warning. Alden's energy would spike, wild and uncontrollable, scorching anyone who came near. Ragnar himself bore scars on his forearms from trying to hold his son through the storms. They'd tried everything. Binding spells, sedatives, ancient rituals whispered by the oldest pack elders. Nothing worked. Until her. Ragnar's jaw clenched as he remembered the way Alden had calmed the moment Arya touched him. The way his son, who trusted no one, who lashed out at everyone, had curled into her arms like she was the only safe place in existence. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "My lord," a guard called urgently. "It's happening again." Ragnar was moving before the man finished speaking. He reached Arya's room just as the air itself seemed to tremble. The torches along the corridor flickered violently. A low hum vibrated through the stone walls, the unmistakable warning of Alden's magic building. Ragnar shoved the door open. Alden stood in the center of the room, his small body rigid, his silver eyes glowing with unnatural light. Energy crackled around him like lightning contained in fragile glass. The furs on the bed smoldered where the magic touched them. Two healers pressed themselves against the far wall, terror written across their faces. And Arya. She knelt in front of the pup, hands raised but not touching, her voice steady and soft. "Alden," she murmured. "Look at me. Just me." The pup's glowing eyes locked onto hers. "Breathe with me," Arya continued, her tone gentle but firm. "In and out. You're safe. I'm right here." Ragnar watched, frozen, as the impossible unfolded before him. The crackling energy around Alden began to dim. The glow in his eyes flickered. His small chest rose and fell in rhythm with Arya's breathing, matching her pace exactly. "That's it," she whispered. "You're doing so well." The magic dissipated like smoke and wind. Alden collapsed forward, and Arya caught him, pulling him into her arms. The pup buried his face against her shoulder, trembling but calm. The room fell silent except for the crackling hearth. Ragnar stared at them both, his heart pounding with something between awe and fear. "How?" one of the healers breathed. Arya looked up, her eyes meeting Ragnar's across the room. She looked exhausted, fragile, but there was something fierce in her gaze. "He just needed someone to stay," she said quietly. Ragnar stepped forward slowly, his mind racing. She hadn't used magic, hadn't cast a spell or invoked the moon goddess. She'd simply been there, and it had worked. His gaze dropped to his son, peaceful in her arms for the first time in weeks. Then back to Arya, the spiritless girl his world had thrown away. The broken one who carries the key. Ragnar's voice was rough when he finally spoke. "You're not leaving this fortress." It wasn't a request. It was a vow. Because whatever Arya Blackhall was to his son, anchor, cure, or destiny, Ragnar wasn't letting her go. Not when she might be the only thing keeping Alden alive. If your heart is already racing, don't you dare stop now. The prophecy is cracking open. Arya's presence is changing everything. And Ragnar is awakening to a truth even he can't control. What's coming next will shake the fortress and their fates. Keep watching, things are about to explode. Let's continue. Tell me about your wolf. Ragnar's voice cut through the quiet of the room like a blade. Arya sat near the hearth with Alden curled in her lap, the pup finally sleeping after another episode. She'd been stroking his fur gently, lost in thought, when the Alpha King's question landed between them. She stiffened. "There's nothing to tell." "That's a lie." Ragnar leaned forward in his chair, his amber eyes sharp and unwavering. "I've seen powerless wolves before. They still carry a presence, a scent that marks them as pack. You don't." He paused, studying her face. "It's like your wolf was never there at all." Arya's throat tightened. She looked down at Alden, focusing on the rise and fall of his small chest rather than the weight of Ragnar's gaze. "It's not that she was never there," she said quietly. "It's that she never woke up. My inner wolf, she's dormant. Silent. I've never heard her voice, never felt her stir." Her fingers trembled slightly as she continued stroking Alden's fur. "The pack elders said I was born broken. A fractured bond that couldn't be fixed." Ragnar went very still. "Dormant wolves are myths," he said slowly. "Ancient stories from before the first packs formed." "Then I'm a myth that got cast out to die," Arya replied, bitterness creeping into her voice. Ragnar's jaw clenched. He stood abruptly, pacing toward the window. If your wolf is truly dormant, not dead, but sealed, that changes everything. Why? He didn't answer immediately. When he finally turned back to her, his expression was troubled. Because Alden's curse is tied to ancient magic, the kind that went dormant centuries ago. His gaze dropped to his son. If you carry that same magic... He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Over the next 3 days, Alden had 4 more episodes. Each time, he became feral, snarling, snapping, his magic lashing out at anyone who approached. Guards fled. Healers refused to enter the room. Even Ragnar couldn't get close without being thrown back by waves of scorching energy. But when Arya walked in, everything stopped. The magic dissipated. The snarling ceased. Alden would crawl to her immediately, pressing himself against her chest as though trying to climb inside her ribcage. "It's her heartbeat," the eldest healer whispered one evening, her voice filled with awe and unease. "He synchronizes with it. When she's calm, he's calm." Ragnar watched from the doorway as Arya held his son, humming softly. Alden's breathing slowed, matching the rhythm of her own. "Witchcraft," someone muttered from the corridor behind him. Ragnar spun so fast the guard stumbled backward. "What did you say?" His voice was deadly quiet. The guard's face went pale. "My lord, I only meant the others are talking. They're saying she's cursed him, that she's using dark magic too." Silence. Ragnar stepped forward, his presence filling the hallway like a physical force. "Arya Blackhowl saved my son's life. She stabilizes him when no one else can. She stays in this fortress under my protection, and anyone..." His gaze swept across every guard and servant within earshot. Anyone who speaks against her answers to me personally. Am I understood? Frantic nods. Hurried murmurs of, "Yes, my lord." Ragnar turned back toward the room, his shoulders rigid with barely contained fury. Inside, Arya still held Alden, unaware of the confrontation. The pup had shifted slightly, his small hand resting over her heart as though measuring its beat. Ragnar approached slowly, quietly. "He only calms for you," he said. Arya looked up, exhaustion shadowing her features. "I don't understand why." "Neither do I." Ragnar knelt beside them, his gaze fixed on his son. "But I'm starting to believe the prophecy wasn't just about you finding him." His eyes lifted to hers, something raw and uncertain flickering in their depths. "I think it was about him finding you." Arya's breath caught. Before she could respond, Alden stirred, his small fingers curling tighter against her chest, directly over her heart. And for just a moment, deep inside Arya's silent, fractured soul, something stirred. The fortress slept under a moonless sky, but Arya couldn't. Alden lay curled against her side on the bed, finally resting after a long night of tremors. She brushed a loose curl from his forehead, exhaustion tugging at every bone in her body. A faint creak drifted down the hallway.
Arya stiffened.
Another sound followed, a slow, deliberate footstep. She rose carefully, easing Alden onto the blankets. Something was wrong. The air felt charged, the same way it had during his magical surges, but colder, unnatural. She stepped toward the door. It burst inward. 2 hooded shapes slipped through the shadows like blades. No warning. No words. Just killing intent aimed straight at Alden.
"No."
Arya moved without thinking, her body reacting faster than fear. She threw herself between the assassins and the bed just as the first dagger slashed toward the pup.
Steel met flesh.
Pain exploded across her shoulder, but she didn't fall. She planted her feet, shoving the attacker back with everything she had. Alden awoke in a wail of raw magic. The second assassin lunged, straight for him. Arya grabbed the nearest thing she could, a wooden stool, and swung it with desperate force. The impact cracked through the room, staggering the hooded figure, but not dropping him. They kept coming. She stepped over Alden, shielding him with her own body. Her heart hammered, her vision blurred. Every instinct she never grew up with, every wolf she never had, ignited like a silent scream inside her. "I won't let you touch him." A blade arced toward her throat. A roar split the hallway. Ragnar. He crashed into the first assassin with the fury of a hurricane. Bones snapped. The man hit the wall so hard the stone dented. The second attacker whirled, slashing wildly, but Ragnar was already on him, tearing through him with a brutality that left no time for mercy. Blood hit the floor. Silence followed. Ragnar spun toward Arya, then froze. She was on her knees, one hand braced on the floor, the other curled protectively around Alden as he sobbed into her chest. Blood soaked her side. Her breathing trembled. Something in Ragnar's expression shattered. He crossed the space in 3 strides, dropping beside her.
Arya.
His voice was raw, almost hoarse. "You're bleeding. You shouldn't have. Why would you? You weren't here." She tried to smile, but it faltered. He needed someone. Ragnar touched her shoulder, and she flinched. His jaw clenched with a fury not aimed at her, but himself. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Not a stray, not a powerless wolf, not a complication, but something written into his fate long before he ever met her. "Arya," his voice dropped to a vow. "This isn't coincidence. You're meant to be here. With him." His eyes softened, then darkened with something deeper. "With me." Arya swallowed hard, her pulse trembling beneath his fingertips. Inside her fractured soul, that strange, impossible stir returned again. Stronger this time. Awakening. Ragnar didn't move for a long moment, his eyes locked on Arya as though she'd transformed into something he couldn't quite comprehend. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with barely contained emotion. "I need to show you something." He crossed his desk and pulled out a worn leather scroll, its edges frayed with age. His hands were steady as he unrolled it, but Arya caught the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders remained rigid. "This is the prophecy the seer spoke 3 years ago," Ragnar said. "The night Alden was born." Arya's heart hammered as he began to read. Asterisk, "The airborne of winter's blood will be hunted before his first shift. His magic will consume him from within, a curse passed through generations. He will survive only if the broken one finds him, the sealed wolf, the spiritless girl who carries the key. She will wake when he calls. Together, they will break what was bound, or both will be destroyed." Asterisk. Arya's breath caught.
No.
The seer died immediately after speaking those words. Ragnar continued, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've spent 3 years trying to understand what it meant. Who the broken one was. How to find her." His voice dropped. "I never imagined she'd find him instead." "I'm not." Arya stood abruptly, backing away from the desk. "I didn't ask for this. I don't want to be anyone's prophecy." "Neither did I," Ragnar said quietly. "But here we are." Alden stirred in his sleep, whimpering softly. Arya's newly awakened wolf immediately responded, a protective growl rumbling through her mind that she felt in her bones. "I can't," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself.
"I'm nobody."
"I was cast out, left to die. I don't have the strength to." The air exploded. Alden's scream shattered the quiet. Not a child's cry, but something primal and terrified. Magic erupted from his small body in waves of raw, scorching power. The desk splintered. Shelves cracked. Windows burst outward, sending glass raining into the snow. Ragnar lunged for his son, but the shockwave caught him mid-stride and hurled him across the room. He hit the stone wall with a sickening crack and crumpled to the floor. "Ragnar." Arya started toward him, but another scream from Alden stopped her cold. The pup was convulsing, his eyes blazing white silver, his small body lifted off the ground by the force of his own magic. The temperature in the room spiked, then plummeted. Frost spread across the floor while embers rained from the ceiling. He was dying. Arya could feel it, not just see it, but feel it through the connection that had formed between them. His magic was tearing him apart from the inside, and no one could reach him through the storm. No one but her. Move, her wolf snarled.
Now.
Arya didn't think. She ran straight into the maelstrom of magic. It burned.
Gods, it burned.
Energy seared her skin, whipped her hair, tried to throw her back. But she pushed forward, one step at a time, until she reached the center where Alden floated, unseeing and terrified. Alden! She grabbed his small body and pulled him against her chest. I'm here. Listen to my voice. The magic lashed at her, trying to separate them. Arya held on tighter. You're safe, she gasped, her voice breaking. I've got you. I won't let go. Alden's glowing eyes found hers. And inside Arya's mind, silent for 18 years, stirring for only days. Her wolf threw back her head and howled. The sound wasn't physical, but it reverberated through the entire fortress. Ancient, powerful, a call that had been silenced too long. Alden's magic answered. It poured into Arya like a river finding its course, no longer wild and destructive, but purposeful. Her wolf absorbed it, channeled it, transformed it into something that didn't burn, but healed.
The storm ceased.
Alden collapsed against her, sobbing, his small arms wrapped around her neck. Arya sank to her knees, holding him, her whole body shaking. Across the room, Ragnar pulled himself upright, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. He stared at them both, at his son, finally calm, and at the woman who'd walked through fire to reach him. The broken one, he whispered, understanding dawning in his eyes. Arya looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, her wolf's voice still echoing in her mind. I heard her, she breathed. I finally heard her. And Ragnar knew, with absolute certainty, that everything had changed. The fortress fell silent except for Alden's quiet breathing and the crackle of dying embers. Arya remained kneeling on the floor, the pup clutched against her chest, her entire body trembling with the aftershock of what had just happened. Inside her mind, her wolf paced, no longer silent, no longer dormant, but alive. The sensation was overwhelming, like discovering she'd been living with only half a soul, and the missing piece had finally clicked into place. Protect the pup, her wolf growled. He is ours. Ours?
Arya whispered aloud, confused.
Ragnar moved toward them slowly, favoring his left side where he'd hit the wall. His amber eyes were fixed on Arya with an intensity that made her breath catch. He could feel it, the shift in the air around her, the crackle of energy that hadn't been there before. Your bond, he said quietly. It's ignited. Arya looked down at Alden, who had stopped glowing entirely. His small fingers curled into her shirt, his breathing deep and even. For the first time since she'd arrived at the fortress, he looked peaceful.
Whole.
He stabilized the moment you howled. Ragnar continued, kneeling beside them. His hand hovered near Alden's head but didn't touch, as though afraid to break whatever fragile balance had been achieved. Your wolf, she answered his call. I don't understand, Arya breathed. Why me? Why him? Ragnar's gaze lifted to hers, something raw and vulnerable flickering in his expression. Because you were always meant to find each other. He reached out slowly, his calloused hand covering hers where it rested on Alden's back. The prophecy, it wasn't a curse. It was a promise. Arya's throat tightened.
I'm nobody.
I was thrown away. You saved my son's life, Ragnar said fiercely. Twice now. You walked through a storm of magic that would have killed anyone else. His voice dropped, rough with emotion. You're not nobody, Arya. Not to him. He paused, his jaw clenching. Not to me. Arya's breath hitched. Ragnar's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it contradicted everything she'd heard about the ruthless Alpha King. I need you, he admitted, the words seeming to cost him. Not just for Alden, but because...
He stopped, struggling.
Because I'm starting to believe you're the only thing holding both of us together. Alden stirred, making a soft sound of contentment. And Arya's wolf hummed with satisfaction, as though she'd known this truth all along. They were a pack now, broken, fractured, and bound by prophecy, but together. Alden's body began to glow, not with the violent, destructive light of his episodes, but with something soft and golden, like dawn breaking over snow. Arya gasped as she felt his small form shift in her arms. Bones lengthened, fur receded. The transformation was gentle, natural, nothing like the painful convulsions she'd witnessed before. When the light faded, a small boy lay cradled against her chest. He couldn't have been more than 3 years old, with silver-white hair that fell across his forehead and those same striking eyes, gold-flecked silver, now gazing up at her with perfect clarity and recognition. "Warm light," he whispered, his voice small and wondering. His tiny hand reached up to touch her face. "You came." Arya's throat closed. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "Alden." He smiled, a real, beautiful smile, and burrowed closer against her. "Warm light. That's what you feel like. That's what your wolf told me." Ragnar made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Arya looked up to find the Alpha King on his knees beside them, his face transformed by raw emotion. His hand trembled as he reached out to touch his son's hair, the boy he'd hidden, protected, feared for since birth. "You shifted," Ragnar breathed, his voice breaking. Peacefully. "I thought I'd never." He couldn't finish. Alden turned in Arya's arms, reaching one hand toward his father, while keeping the other fisted in her shirt.
"Papa."
"Warm light made me safe." "I know," Ragnar whispered. "I know she did." His gaze lifted to Arya's, and what she saw there stole her breath. Gratitude, yes, but something deeper. Something that looked like reverence. Ragnar's hand rose slowly, his calloused palm cupping her cheek with devastating gentleness. "You will never be cast out again," he said, his voice rough with conviction. "Do you hear me, Arya? You are under my protection now."
"My Dean."
"My kingdom." His thumb brushed away one of her tears. "My son has chosen you, and I..." He stopped, jaw clenching as though the words fought against being spoken. "I'm beginning to understand why." Arya's wolf stirred, satisfied and certain. And then, clear as a bell, her wolf spoke its first full sentence in her mind. "This is home." Arya's breath hitched. Home. A word she'd stopped believing in years ago. But as Alden settled peacefully between them and Ragnar's hand remained gentle against her face, she felt the truth of it settle into her bones. Ragnar looked at her like a man seeing destiny unfold, not a burden to be managed, but something precious he hadn't known he was searching for. "This is only the beginning," he murmured. And Arya realized with startling clarity. The prophecy hadn't just bound her to Alden. It had bound her to them both. Thank you so much for listening to this story to the very end. If Arya, Ragnar, and Alden touched your heart, even for a moment, please hit subscribe. I post powerful, emotional stories like this every single day, and your support helps me bring more worlds, more love, and more unforgettable characters to life. Thank you for being here. I can't wait to share the next story with you.